I never understood why my dad locked every window, drugged my food, and told me to never stand out. For years I thought he was just overprotective, until I discovered the papers with my name on them. Now I can't unsee the truth. My dad put a fingerprint lock on my bedroom door. He told me it was for protection after he caught me cutting my own hair. But when I asked him what he was really doing, he grabbed my shoulders so hard it hurt, leaned in close, and whispered, "They'll kill us both if you ruin this." I didn't know what to say. I just stayed silent. That was 3 weeks ago. This morning he was outside my school crying. "You need to understand something about my father. He raised me alone after my mom left when I was 3. At least that's what he told me. From as far back as I can remember, he set these rules. At first they looked like overprotective parenting. No sleepovers. No social media. No photos anywhere. But it got darker. I wasn't allowed to stand out. Couldn't raise my hand in class. Couldn't be the best. Couldn't fail either. My job was to exist in this bland, gray middle where no one noticed me. He made me walk with my head down. Speak in monotone. Wear the same gray clothes every single day. I wasn't allowed to laugh too loud or cry too much or even react. I had to be forgettable. And then came the documentation. Every morning, saliva samples. Voice recordings to track the way my tone developed. Temperature checks between my legs. He made me practice being grabbed by my arms, my waist, even my neck, so I wouldn't flinch. He said emotions made me impure. So I shut down. At school I was the strange girl. The one who never talked, never ate, never smiled. By middle school the other kids stopped even trying to include me. Teachers thought I was autistic or disturbed, but whenever they called home, Dad had a ready-made excuse. Anxiety disorder. Social phobia. Selective mutism. He had all the labels. And I had no voice. By the time I turned 15 it got even worse. He locked every window. Put cameras in my room. Started giving me these vitamins that knocked me out. Measured me every week. Took monthly photos of my face, supposedly to track growth. One night at 3 in the morning I heard a clicking noise. I kept my eyes barely open, pretending to sleep, and I saw him. Standing in my doorway. Taking picture after picture of me in bed. Later that same night he locked himself in his office, and for the first time in my life I heard him yell. Not just yell, beg. Sobbing into the phone. I'd never seen my father show emotion beyond cold fear, but now he was crying, his words broken and desperate. The next morning at breakfast I asked him about it. His whole body went stiff. "Bad dream," he muttered, eyes fixed on his coffee. When I insisted, he gripped that mug so hard it cracked in his hands. "You're confused," he snapped. "The pills cause hallucinations." But I knew what I'd heard. And the way he kept staring at me, like he was memorizing my face, terrified me. Then strangers started showing up at the door. Always men. Always at weird hours. Old work colleagues, Dad claimed with a stiff smile, sending me upstairs. But his voice with them was different, low, nervous, submissive. He was scared of them. That's when I started to fight back in secret. I stopped swallowing the pills, hiding them in my mattress lining. And slowly the fog in my head began to lift. For the first time in years I could think. I could plan. I timed his patterns, Tuesday grocery runs, 2 hours gone. Thursday errands, 90 minutes. I practiced picking my bedroom lock with bobby pins until I could do it in seconds. His office was the real goal. Finally, one Tuesday, the moment his car pulled away, I made my move. 3 tries with the lock and I was in. The room wasn't neat or organized like I expected. It was chaos. Stacks of paper everywhere. Bills everywhere. All stamped final notice in red. Foreclosure letters. Credit card balances that made my head spin. And then the medical bills. Oncology ward. The name, Monica Patterson. But my mom's name was Linda. These bills were dated 12 years ago. The exact time my father told me she'd left. Chemotherapy, $340,000. Surgery, $180,000. Experimental treatments, $500,000. She hadn't left us. She had died. And my dad had been drowning in debt ever since. Then I saw the loan documents. Not from banks. From people with names that didn't sound real. Mr. White. Mr. Black. Mr. A. Gray. And the interest rates? Insane. They doubled every year. But then I read the collateral section. And my blood went cold. Ava. Female. Current age 13. Virgin status guaranteed. Legal guardianship to be transferred at age 16 if balance unpaid. Adoption papers pre-signed. Regular documentation required as proof of asset condition. It hit me all at once. Every rule. Every pill. Every measurement. He wasn't protecting me. He was preserving me. For them. I was collateral. My hands went numb holding those papers when I heard the front door slam. Dad was back. Too early. His heavy steps thundered up the stairs. Panicked, I grabbed the old flip phone I'd found in the basement months ago. I started snapping photos of everything, the bills, the loan agreements, the signed adoption papers. Each click of the camera sounded like a gunshot in the silence. His footsteps stopped at the top of the stairs. "Ava?" His voice was urgent, almost frantic. I shoved the papers back onto the desk, but one slipped sideways. No time. The office door handle rattled just as I slipped into the hallway. I sprinted to my room, threw myself on the bed, forced my breathing to slow. Through the crack under my door I watched his shadow pause. Then move. The office door creaked open. 10 seconds of silence. Then he cursed. Loud. Ugly. He knew. At dinner, he stared at me the whole time. Same bland chicken and rice as every Tuesday. His hands trembled as he set my plate down. He kept glancing at the camera in the corner, like he was calculating. I forced myself to act normal. Small bites. Blank face. Eyes down. Inside, my mind was screaming. That night, I lay awake, mapping out every possible escape route. My 16th birthday was 3 weeks away. 21 days before they came for me. The bathroom window that never locked. The basement door to the backyard. The attic hatch in the hallway. I listed them all in my head. I thought about the kids at school, the ones I'd never spoken to. Wondering if anyone would help if I told the truth. And then, around 2 in the morning, I heard it. Dad's footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Right outside my door. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of power tools outside my door. A sharp, metallic drilling. When I opened it, Dad was there, sweat beading down his face, even though the hallway was freezing. He was installing another lock. This time, one of those sleek digital kinds with a fingerprint scanner. For your protection, he muttered, not looking me in the eye. I stood there, watching him test it over and over, his thumb turning the light from red to green. 3 times, just to be sure. Then, like nothing was strange, he handed me my morning pills. I did what I always did, pretended to swallow, then slipped them under my tongue. As soon as he left, I tucked them into the growing stash hidden in my mattress. At school that day, I sat in my usual spot in the cafeteria. Corner table. Empty tray. Staring at nothing. But something was different. For the first time, I actually looked around. 2 tables away, Lucas Martinez was laughing with his friends, showing them something on his phone. And then he caught me staring. And instead of looking away, like everyone else always did, he smiled. Just a small one. But for me, it felt like a spark in the dark. The first real human connection I'd had in years. Later, during PE, something inside me snapped. Instead of standing motionless like Dad trained me, I played. I actually played. My arms remembered how to hit the ball. My legs remembered how to jump. For the first time in forever, my body moved freely, without the drugged haze slowing me down. And at the gym doorway, I saw her. Dr. Miller, the school counselor, notebook in hand. Watching me. Writing something down. By the time I walked to the parking lot after school, Dad was already there, waiting. His face was pale with rage. The teacher must have called. He didn't even wait for me to buckle my seatbelt before peeling out of the lot. At every red light, his phone buzzed. Messages. Each one from someone named Mr. A. Gray. Every time his jaw clenched tighter. That night, while he was in the shower, I crept into his office again. His computer didn't even have a password. On the desktop, a folder labeled, Asset Documentation, Do Not Delete. My stomach dropped. Hundreds of photos of me. Sleeping. Close-ups of my face. My hands. My feet. Audio files of my voice from those tests. Spreadsheets tracking my height, weight, measurements he took while I was drugged. This wasn't protection. It was inventory. I copied everything onto my flip phone's memory card, my hands steady, not from fear this time, but from purpose. 2 days later, I stood in the bathroom with my mom's old nail scissors. And I hacked off my hair. Chunk after chunk. Brown strands piling on the floor. It came out choppy, uneven, sticking up in every direction, but it was mine. My first real choice about my own body. I didn't care what Dad would say. For the first time, I didn't care at all. At 5 a.m., the whole house shook with his scream. I bolted upright as his footsteps pounded down the hall. My door slammed open so hard it bounced against the wall. He froze when he saw me. My chopped up hair. His face went white, then red, then purple. His mouth opened and closed like he couldn't even form words. Then, in 2 strides, he was across the room. His hands clamped down on my shoulders, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. His whole body trembled as tears, actual tears, ran down his face. They'll kill us both, he sobbed. Over and over. They'll kill us both. For the first time, he didn't pretend there was no they. He dragged me to his room and yanked open his closet. From the top shelf, he pulled out a wig. Straight. Blonde. Nothing like me. His hands shook so badly, he adjusted it 3 times before shoving me in front of the mirror. The girl staring back wasn't me anymore. Just some fake doll wearing someone else's hair. On the drive to school, he didn't say a word. Just kept checking the mirrors like we were being followed. The second he dropped me off, I yanked the wig off and stuffed it deep in my backpack. At the entrance, Dr. Miller was waiting. Which was odd, counselors didn't wait outside. She saw my butchered hair, put a hand on my elbow, and gently steered me away from the main hallway. Her office smelled like coffee and vanilla candles. She closed the door, flipped the little do not disturb sign, and pushed a notepad and pen across the desk. I tried to speak. But nothing came out. So I wrote one word. Help. She read it. Looked at me. Then locked the door. From her mini fridge, she pulled out apple juice and crackers. Simple, ordinary things. But monumental because no one had ever asked what I wanted before. I chose the juice. The crackers. I chose. She watched me eat, scribbling quiet notes on her yellow pad. Around lunch, there was a knock. She opened the door and let Lucas in. He sat down. Didn't speak. Just sat with me while I finished my crackers. And then, after 10 minutes of silence, the words came out. Barely a whisper. My father's going to sell me. Lucas didn't flinch. Didn't laugh. Didn't say I was crazy. He just nodded like he already suspected something. Dr. Miller picked up the phone. I heard phrases like immediate intervention and emergency custody. The next 2 days blurred together. I stayed in the nurse's office, eating real meals, sleeping on a cot meant for sick kids. On the third day, Dad showed up, folder in hand, demanding they release me for a family emergency. I hid in the nurse's bathroom, shaking, while the secretary stalled him. Through the wall, I heard him on his phone. His voice low, angry. "She's just having teenage rebellion," he told someone. "The merchandise is still intact." Merchandise. That's what I was to him. The bathroom door opened. A woman stepped in. Plain clothes. But the way she moved told me everything, cop. She found me pressed against the wall. Instead of questions, she just grabbed my hand and led me toward the back exit. Through the halls, I could still hear my dad screaming at the principal. We slipped out to the loading dock and into her unmarked car. Her name was Detective Vasquez. I showed her everything on my phone, the photos, the spreadsheets, the loan documents. She pulled over behind a grocery store, her face pale as she read the collateral papers. While she made call after call, I watched families through the windshield. Kids begging for candy. Moms letting them pick between two kinds of cookies. Ordinary moments I'd never had. Her eyes flicked between me and those families, like she was realizing just how much I'd been robbed of. The clock on the dash read 3:47 when she finally hung up. She spread papers across the dashboard, explaining that my photos weren't enough. The courts would need more. And even worse, years of training had locked my voice. Whenever I tried to say what happened, the words wouldn't come. My throat closed. My voice failed. She needed another way to prove it. That's when my phone buzzed. A text from Lucas. "Don't come back. Your dad's here with 3 men in suits." I showed her. Her face hardened. She grabbed her radio, called for backup, and told me we were going to her apartment. But when we got close, she froze. A black sedan was parked right outside her building. She lifted binoculars from the glove box. And then I saw her body go stiff. Mr. Gray. It was him. She backed away slowly, weaving through side streets until we ended up at a dingy motel. By morning, she moved me into a small safe house on the edge of town. Still, something felt wrong. Why had they found her apartment so easily? And then I remembered the jacket Dad always made me wear. I turned it inside out, running my fingers along the seams, until I felt it. A tiny lump in the lining near the collar. Vasquez cut it open with her knife. A tracker. No bigger than a button. He'd been monitoring me for who knows how long. That night at the safe house, the phone rang at 2 a.m. Vasquez put it on speaker. And I heard my dad. Sobbing. Begging me to come back. "They have the papers ready," he choked. "If you don't come home by tomorrow, they'll kill me. They'll find you anyway. I tried to protect you as long as I could." His voice cracked as he admitted how it all began, with my mom's cancer treatment. The bills were impossible. These men offered help. He signed papers he barely understood. Thought it was just about money. But it wasn't. And now they wanted their payment. The call lasted 17 minutes before he broke down and hung up. Vasquez hit stop on the recorder, listening back twice to make sure every word was clear. By 4:30 in the morning, I'd given up on sleep. My nerves were shot, my head buzzing. So I grabbed my backpack, dragged it to the kitchen table, and dumped it out. What spilled across the wood made even Vasquez freeze. Pills. 3 years' worth of pills I'd never swallowed. Hundreds of them, all hidden in the lining of my bag. I sorted them into little piles by color and size, like some sick rainbow. Vasquez snapped photos, her face tight. She told me this could prove long-term drugging, but we'd still need prescription records to show my dad had been filling them consistently. Around 6 a.m., Vasquez's phone rang. It was Dr. Miller. She'd been digging through my school files and found something insane, years of medical excuse notes for my behavior, all supposedly signed by doctors. But here's the catch, none of those doctors actually existed. No licenses. No records. Nothing. It was a whole fake paper trail designed to keep me isolated. To make sure no one ever got close enough to help. While Vasquez was still on the phone, my flip phone buzzed. A new text. Lucas. He said my dad had shown up at his house. His parents had already called 911. Vasquez immediately relayed it to dispatch, and Lucas's family filed a restraining order right there. That created the first official record showing how dangerous my father had become. Then it hit me, my bedroom cameras. They weren't just recording, they were streaming. To a cloud account. One I knew the password for because I'd watched him type it so many times. Vasquez opened her laptop and I logged in. What we found made my stomach turn. Thousands of hours of footage. Videos of him measuring me. Photographing me while I slept. And worst of all, recordings of his phone calls. Clear conversations about my development with the men he owed money to. It was all there. By 7, the prosecutor herself showed up at the station. She set up a recorder in the interview room and asked me to state my name for the record. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The words were there. Stuck. Trapped behind walls built over 16 years of training. She tried again. And again. 2 hours of different approaches, yes or no questions I could nod to, pointing at written statements. But every time that red light on the recorder blinked, my throat locked up. My father's voice echoed in my head, stay silent, stay invisible, stay forgettable. Finally, she shut it off and turned to Vasquez. Her face said it all. Without my testimony, the trafficking charges wouldn't stick. And then Lucas walked in. With his parents. His mom still in her hospital scrubs from an overnight shift. Lucas sat down and told them he wanted to testify, everything I'd told him at school. And his mom, Nancy, an ER nurse, didn't just sit there quietly. She pulled Vasquez aside and started listing off my symptoms like a checklist. The tremors in my hands, my pupils staying wide even in bright light, how I zoned out mid-conversation. She said it all looked exactly like long-term benzodiazepine withdrawal, mixed with conditioning trauma. For the first time, someone was naming what was happening to me. By day 5, Vasquez got a warrant for my father's financial records. And wow, the mess was unbelievable. 3 mortgages on the house. Retirement accounts drained dry. Credit cards maxed, then defaulted. And then the trail veered into darker territory, shell companies with names like Sunrise Holdings, Eastern Imports, New Horizon Investments. All roads led back to one parent company, Mr. Gray's. The loans got uglier the deeper she dug. Interest rates starting at 30%, doubling every year. No one could escape that. By noon, my dad walked into the station with a lawyer in a suit so expensive it didn't belong in this town. They shoved paperwork across the desk claiming I was mentally ill and needed immediate psychiatric treatment. Signed by some doctor. The diagnosis? Severe schizophrenia. Vasquez ran the name. No license. Not in any state. And the hospital they wanted to send me to? Peaceful Meadows Wellness Center. Sounds lovely, right? Except it was actually a converted warehouse 40 miles out, owned by another shell company tied to Eastern Imports. And the worst part? 3 girls had been admitted there in the past 2 years. Not a single one was seen again. Families told they were transferred overseas for treatment. That broke something in me. I grabbed a pen and started writing. Page after page. 20 pages of everything I couldn't force out of my mouth. The saliva samples. The temperature checks. Him grabbing my arms, my neck. The photographs of me sleeping. The weekly measurements. At first, my handwriting was neat, precise. But by the end, I was pressing so hard the pen ripped through the paper. That's when the guard burst into the room. Something was happening in the parking garage. We rushed to the monitors. And there he was. Mr. Gray. Walking calmly toward the entrance with 2 men in suits. They didn't even bother hiding. We watched as they strolled right up to my dad's lawyer. He reached into his briefcase and handed over a manila folder. Vasquez zoomed the feed. Adoption papers. My name. Tomorrow's date. Already filled in. At the bottom? Judge Whitfield's signature. Vasquez pulled his file and her face drained of color. 17 adoptions in 5 years. Every single one a teenage girl between 14 and 16. Every single one shipped overseas within days. Always the same story, troubled teens, parents couldn't cope, files sealed for privacy. It wasn't isolated. It was systematic. By 2 a.m. on day 6, I was combing through the case files Vasquez had pulled. One picture made my chest seize. A girl named Grace. She looked just like me. Same long dark hair. Same thin frame. Same vacant eyes from years of sedation. Her adoption had been finalized just 3 months ago to a businessman from Moldova. That could have been me, I whispered, not even realizing I'd said it out loud. The door opened suddenly. Vasquez walked in with a woman in a dark suit who carried herself like she owned the air around her. She pulled out a badge. FBI. Agent Diana Powell. This case is federal now, she said. She pushed a laptop in front of me. If talking is too hard, type. My fingers hit the keys and the floodgates opened. Everything I'd never been able to say poured out, filling the screen. The next morning, Nancy Martinez came back with a stack of medical files. She testified that she'd been documenting every time she'd seen me at school functions, looking drugged. Dilated pupils. Slurred speech. Delayed reflexes. Classic sedative exposure. She even filed to be my temporary medical guardian until the case was resolved. Said she wasn't going to stand by and let me slip through the cracks. The judge approved it that afternoon. That's how I ended up in the Martinez minivan, riding home with Lucas and his siblings. Watching normal kids fight over the front seat. Dinner that night nearly broke me. Peas flying across the table. Dad jokes. Lucas's mom laughing so hard milk shot out of her nose. It was chaos. Messy. Loud. Interrupting each other mid-sentence. And to me? It was like watching aliens. A family species I'd never encountered. The following day, Dr. Brown from school walked into the courthouse with a stack of my standardized test scores from the past 13 years. She spread them across the table. Every single score was average. Perfectly average. Never more than 2 points higher or lower. Statistically impossible. She highlighted questions where I'd clearly known the advanced answer, but instead chose something simple. Wrong. Proof of my father's rule, be forgettable. Day 7. The prosecutor burst in. My father had made bail. Someone wired $200,000 from an offshore account in Cyprus. Within hours, he was on Channel 9 crying for the cameras. Tissue in hand. Talking about how the police had kidnapped his daughter and brainwashed me. He showed baby photos. Told stories about raising me alone after mom died. Painted me as a troubled, mentally ill teen manipulated by corrupt cops. By morning, every local channel had picked it up. By afternoon, it was national news. Father fights for troubled daughter. My face was everywhere. And then, on Good Morning America, he sobbed, saying law enforcement had turned me against him. I sat in the Martinez living room, watching it all unravel on TV, when Lucas slid his phone into my hand. Time for you to exist online for real, he said. He made me an Instagram account. Within minutes, classmates started following. Kids I'd never spoken to were leaving comments. I always wondered why you looked so scared. I tried to be your friend in 3rd grade, but you ran away. My mom told me you were being abused, but no one listened. Hundreds of them. Kids who had seen something was wrong but never knew what. And that's when Agent Powell burst through the door, phone in hand, face tight. She showed us a new legal filing. Mr. Gray's lawyer was demanding custody enforcement, claiming my dad had already signed the transfer months ago. The documents looked official. They even had my signature. My handwriting. But I'd never seen them before. Powell was already on the phone calling for an emergency injunction, while Nancy wrapped her arms around me, whispering in my ear, "Breathe. Just breathe." The next morning, Agent Powell came back carrying a thick folder, her face set in stone. She sat down across from us and said her team had been digging into Mr. A. Gray all night. And here's the thing, Mr. Gray wasn't even a real person. It was a role. An identity passed around like a mask. The current Gray turned out to be a man named Victor Klov. Interpol had been chasing him for 5 years. His specialty? Trafficking girls across Eastern Europe. The pattern was always the same, target fathers drowning in debt, and use their daughters as collateral. And now he'd brought that operation here. By day 8, Nancy drove me to meet Dr. Jennifer Park, a woman whose eyes were soft but who carried a weight I could feel. She specialized in helping survivors of trafficking. She explained something that finally made sense of my silence. My inability to speak wasn't weakness. It wasn't fear. It was programming. Years of conditioning had rewired my brain so that whenever I tried to speak words that weren't pre-approved, my throat literally closed. My body had learned to treat speaking the truth as danger. She told me it would take time, maybe years, but it could be undone. That same afternoon, the FBI seized more of my dad's computers. Encrypted folders. And inside? Correspondence with multiple Grays, stretching back 12 years. This wasn't new. This wasn't isolated. It had been going on since before I even knew what was happening. 3 days later, we were in court for the emergency custody hearing. I sat in the front row, my hands trembling in my lap. The room was packed, reporters scribbling notes, social workers flipping through files. And then I saw him. In the back corner. The man from the photos I'd once found in Dad's desk. The ones labeled Mr. White in my father's handwriting. He was here. Watching me. Smiling. My skin went ice cold. I pulled out my phone and texted the FBI agent who had given me his number, describing everything, the scar on the man's cheek, the gold watch he kept checking, his seat in the gallery. The reply came fast, "We're already in position." And when I glanced up again, I saw 2 men in the gallery shift subtly, moving closer to the exits. Then my dad took the stand. Wearing his best suit, the one he used to save for parent-teacher conferences. His voice was calm, reasonable, rehearsed. He said I'd been influenced by strangers online, that people had filled my head with lies. He held up a stack of medical records. Claimed they showed years of psychiatric treatment. Paranoid delusions. Violent outbursts. His lawyer waved fake doctor's notes diagnosing me with everything under the sun, schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder. They painted me as a dangerous, unstable teenager who needed to be hospitalized, for my own good. And the worst part? The judge was nodding along. Scribbling notes. I could feel the room turning against me. When they finally called me forward, I stood and froze. The words wouldn't come. My throat clamped shut, the old training still ruling me even with everything I knew now. The silence stretched forever. But then I saw Lucas in the second row. His mom beside him. Both nodding, urging me forward. And somehow I forced it out. Just one sentence. My name is Ava Patterson, and my father has been selling me since I was 3 years old. The room exploded. Reporters shouting. The judge banging his gavel. But before anyone could restore order, the FBI agents were already moving. One snapped cuffs on my father's wrists. Another read out federal trafficking charges. And then, shockingly, they arrested the judge too. Sealed indictments had just been opened, exposing years of bribes to push through custody transfers for girls like me. Over the next few weeks, the FBI started pulling the whole web apart. It wasn't just one corrupt judge. It was a network. Family court judges across Iowa, Illinois, Missouri. Rubber stamping adoptions, custody changes, transfers, all for the ring. And my dad, with all his obsessive documentation? He'd unknowingly given the FBI the perfect map to bring the entire thing down. In the meantime, I stayed with Lucas's family. And Nancy, God bless her, started teaching me the simplest things I'd never been allowed to learn. Like how to pick out my own clothes. I remember standing in a Target dressing room sobbing because I didn't even know my size. I didn't know what colors I liked. Or restaurants, where waiters asked what I wanted and I froze. Because Dad had always ordered for me. Fake dietary restrictions. Lies. Every little choice felt massive, like learning how to be a person for the very first time. The FBI kept combing through my dad's drives. More encrypted folders. More emails dating all the way back to when Mom first got sick. It turned out the creditors had found him through the hospital billing department. At first, Dad refused. Said he'd find another way. But they kept hiking interest rates, piling on penalties. Until he broke. Until he signed me away. And then they coached him. Step by step. Exactly how to raise me. The pills. The documentation. The blank expressions. All of it, carefully scripted by men who treated me like a product. Jennifer, the counselor, helped me record a testimony video in their living room. Safe. Familiar. For 3 hours I spoke. Every detail I could remember. The drills. The touching exercises where Dad grabbed me at random. The weekly body measurements. The photographs. The punishments for blinking, for showing emotion, for reacting at all. The FBI said it was the most detailed account they'd ever seen in a trafficking case. But then Dad's lawyer pulled his dirtiest trick yet. He leaked all my medical records to a blogger, my real name, my address, everything. The fake diagnoses mixed in with real health info, old vaccination records, dental files. And suddenly the internet exploded with opinions. Some called me a survivor. Others called me a liar. Protesters showed up outside Lucas's house with signs. News vans parked on the street. Reporters knocked at all hours. Jennifer had to call the police just to clear them away. By day 12, the prosecutor's office had to sneak me through the courthouse's back entrance. Nancy took the stand. She held up my medical charts and explained my vitamin D levels were so low, doctors were shocked I could even walk. My muscles so weak from years of enforced stillness that climbing stairs made me tremble. The courtroom went silent when she described scars on my arms from Dad's weekly blood draws. Photos of my room with its locked windows. And the pills, sedatives, the same used in hospitals. She listed everything wrong with my body after 13 years of captivity. And the judge wrote note after note. Meanwhile, the FBI caught Victor Klov himself. They grabbed him at an airport gate, trying to board a flight to Romania on a fake passport. But 2 of his associates? Still out there. Still lurking around my old school. Back at Lucas's house, he sat me down in front of a laptop. Taught me how to make a private social media account under a fake name. I found survivor groups. And for the first time I realized I wasn't alone. Girls from across the country. All with stories that echoed mine. Some were told to walk with their heads down. Others forced to wear the same color clothes every day. Many described the vitamins that made them drowsy, the monthly photographs, the blood tests. My story wasn't unique. It was part of a system. The next day, an FBI agent called Jennifer with another update. The money trail was clear now. These weren't just criminals. They'd built a front, a company that looked legitimate on paper. They'd been offering desperate families financial help for medical emergencies. But hidden in the fine print, the collateral was always the same, their children. My dad hadn't been the only one. Not even close. Day 14 came, and for the first time since moving in with Lucas's family, I woke up without scanning the corners of my room for cameras. I didn't freeze before moving. I didn't hold my breath waiting for permission. I just got up, walked into the kitchen, and instead of pouring the cereal Jennifer had laid out, I cracked some eggs and made myself breakfast. What I wanted. It sounds so small, right? But after 16 years of living like property, choosing my own meal felt like climbing Everest. That same morning, the FBI's tech team finally cracked my dad's cloud storage password. What they found made the courtroom go silent. Hundreds of audio files. The prosecutor played one in front of the judge, my dad's voice cold, slick, salesman-like, discussing my market value. Negotiating prices based on my virginity status. It didn't even sound like a father. It sounded like a man bartering over a product. He even described the exact date of my 16th birthday transfer. He had backup plans ready in case I ran. My own life, mapped out like a business transaction. The next day, Dr. Davis testified. She explained how every single rule, every restriction, had been part of a system. He destroyed my confidence by forbidding me to succeed. He destroyed my independence by making sure I never failed either. He cut me off from friends so I had no one to turn to. Constant surveillance taught me privacy was impossible. She called it what it was, psychological conditioning. Step by step, he built me into the perfect victim. And then everything shifted. The prosecutor got a call in the middle of testimony. One of my dad's biggest creditors, a man known as Mr. Black, had been arrested in Chicago. He wanted to cut a deal. In exchange for leniency, he handed over 12 addresses. 12 houses. All filled with girls just like me. Within hours, the FBI hit every location. And inside they found them. Girls as young as 8, as old as 15. Living under the same restrictions. Same rules. Same nightmare. 2 days later I met one. Her name was Lily. She was 18 now, 2 years free after her father died before her transfer date. She showed me pictures of her dorm, her boyfriend, her life. She told me he knew her story and loved her anyway. Listening to her, it was the first time I let myself believe I might have a future too. By day 16, the prosecutor had shifted gears. She wasn't just going after my dad anymore. She was building a RICO case. The kind they use against organized crime. The mafia. And my evidence? It was the foundation. The key to tearing down the entire network. Day 17. I sat in a small room, 3 cameras pointed at me. The prosecutor explained how closed-circuit testimony worked. I typed my answers on a laptop. My hands shook with every keystroke, but it was the only way. Speaking out loud still triggered the conditioning. From another room, the grand jury watched as I described the saliva collections, the weekly measurements, the photos of me asleep. And when they asked about the touching exercises, my throat closed completely. So I typed. And the prosecutor read my words aloud. 2 hours later I was drained. But she told me I'd given them exactly what they needed. That same afternoon, a woman showed up at the Victim Services Center. She said she was Robert's mother. My grandmother. I had never even known she existed. She brought a cardboard box full of letters, my dad's letters. Written across 15 years. She read them aloud, sobbing, describing how he begged her for money she didn't have, detailing the experimental treatments that cost more than most people's homes. And buried in those letters, his descent. From desperate father to man willing to sell his daughter. The prosecutor added the letters to the evidence stack. A written roadmap of his corruption. By day 18, something unexpected happened. The school district approved my enrollment under protective custody. For the first time in forever, I could go to regular classes again, with security in place. Lucas met me at the entrance. 5 other kids from my old classes were waiting. They didn't pry. Didn't ask questions. They just walked in a circle around me like an invisible shield. In English, the teacher didn't call on me even when I knew the answer. She just nodded, understanding I wasn't ready. At lunch, the group sat with me in the corner. Lucas on one side, a girl named Amy on the other. My buffer. It was quiet. Safe. Almost normal. And for once, I didn't feel like the weird girl everyone avoided. But that afternoon, everything shattered again. The van transporting my father to his court hearing crashed into a concrete barrier at 60 miles an hour. When the guards pulled him out, they found his seatbelt wrapped tight around his neck. And in his shoe, a confession note. He admitted everything. The debts. The grooming. The documentation. But he claimed he had been protecting me by delaying the transfer until I turned 16. Other fathers, he wrote, had handed their daughters over at 14. Some even younger. That was his defense, that I should be grateful. His suicide attempt failed. Paramedics revived him after 8 minutes without oxygen, leaving him brain damaged but alive. Alive enough to face trial. And that note? It became the prosecution's nuclear weapon. Because it named names. 3 judges. A state senator. Customers. The FBI launched raids across 5 states at 4 a.m. the next morning. And in those raids they found 4 more girls. One was only 11, already drugged with the same pills I'd taken for years. Another was 15, her transfer date 2 weeks away, bags already packed. The youngest? Just 9. Her mother had been recording the touching exercises on the same kind of camera they'd pulled from my dad's office. Seeing their faces on the news gutted me. But it also made me realize something. My case had saved them. 3 days later, Jennifer drove me to the hospital. Robert lay handcuffed to his bed, machines beeping. I didn't plan to speak. I didn't even step close. I just pulled out the one photo I had of my mom, Monica, before the cancer. Smiling. Whole. I set it on his bedside table. His eyes filled with tears. His mouth tried to form words. But nothing came out. And I walked away, leaving the photo behind as a reminder of what we'd both lost, and what he chose to become. Over the next week, forensic accountants followed the money trail. And what they uncovered was bigger than anyone had imagined. More than 200 families. All across the country. Parents who had signed contracts just like my dad's, trading their children as collateral for medical debts. Some were still making payments, trying to keep their kids safe. Others had already lost them. Sold off to wealthy buyers who thought they were adopting orphans or hiring domestic help. But they weren't orphans. They weren't employees. They were children. Just like me. Jennifer helped me draft my victim impact statement. 3 sessions. Each one tearing me apart. The first ended after 2 sentences. I broke down hyperventilating, just from writing about the inspections. The second I made it further. Until I described the photos. Then I vomited and had to stop. By the 3rd session I forced myself through 5 full pages. I wrote about the mornings of saliva samples. The blank face training. The blood draws. And the things I lost. Friendships I never got to build. Laughter I had to swallow. A normal childhood that was stolen and sold before I ever had a chance to live it. Day 20 arrived, and for the first time in my life I watched people stand up for me in court. Lucas's parents. They were right there before the judge, offering to become my foster family until I turned 18. Nancy held my hand the entire time. Her husband spoke firmly, explaining how they'd already prepared a bedroom for me, how therapy was set up with a specialist who worked with trafficking survivors. The room was packed, social workers, prosecutors, reporters scribbling notes, but my eyes locked on one thing. Lucas's little sister sitting in the front row. Holding a sign she'd made herself. Purple glitter letters spelling out, "Welcome home, Ava." The judge didn't even hesitate. Approved it on the spot. Called it the first good thing to come out of this case. And just like that, I had something I never thought I'd get. A family who wanted me, not because they had to, not because I was collateral, but because they cared. 3 weeks later, the trial began downtown. Robert sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. When the judge asked for his plea, he said, "Guilty," his voice cracking. But his lawyer tried to spin it, talking about coercion, threats, as if Robert had been forced. Then the prosecutor stood and pressed play on a laptop. And Robert's voice filled the courtroom. His voice. Calm. Negotiating my market value. Talking about virginity like it was a price tag. Discussing delivery dates like I was cargo. Promising I'd stay compliant and documented for transfer. The defense lawyer sat down without another word. The next day, they played my video testimony on a giant screen. I couldn't be in the same room, I watched from a separate space. But I saw the gallery's faces when they heard everything. The saliva samples. The temperature checks. The way my dad grabbed my neck to train me not to flinch. People left the courtroom when I described being photographed while I slept. Measured every single week. The defense tried one last trick, said I exaggerated. But Dr. Miller came armed with 13 years of school files. Teacher after teacher had written reports about my blank stare, my monotone voice, my total inability to connect with other kids. They showed how a bright, curious little girl had been systematically erased, turned into a ghost. And the defense? They had nothing left to say. Day 3. Victor took the stand, claiming diplomatic immunity. But the FBI wasn't having it. They pulled out passport records proving he'd entered on fake documents. His Victor identity was a lie. His real name? Paul Henderson. From Detroit. He'd been running this network for 15 years under different masks. By the time closing arguments ended, the jury barely needed 3 hours. Guilty. On everything. Trafficking. Child abuse. Fraud. Conspiracy. Money laundering. Crimes I couldn't even pronounce. Robert sat frozen, staring at the table as if it wasn't even happening. 2 weeks later, sentencing. My hands shook as I read my victim impact statement, but my voice grew stronger with every sentence. I told them about the isolation. The pills. The years of being trained to disappear. I told them what it felt like to realize I was collateral. That my father had signed papers promising my virginity to strangers. The judge gave him life without parole. As guards led him away, Robert mouthed a word. Sorry. I stared straight through him. The way he taught me to stare through everyone else. His apology meant nothing. That night, the Martinez family threw me a birthday party. Chocolate cake. Purple frosting that said, Happy 17th, Ava. Lucas's little sister showed me how to blow out candles and make a wish, something I'd never been allowed to do. I smiled, really smiled, and Nancy cried, saying it was the first time I looked like a normal teenager. 2 days later, Agent Powell came with news. My case had sparked something bigger. Congress was drafting new legislation, Monica's Law. Named after my mother. It would make it a federal crime to ever use children as collateral for debt. Punishable by life sentences. At the press conference, I stood at the podium and told my story one more time. My voice steady. And then I announced the Monica Patterson Foundation. Its mission, to help families drowning in medical debt find safe, legitimate support, before predators could sink their claws in. Hospitals had already pledged partnerships. Donations had already reached 3 million. After the cameras stopped rolling, I stepped outside into bright Iowa sunshine. And there they were, the Martinez family by their minivan. Lucas holding takeout from my new favorite restaurant. His sister bouncing with excitement about her school play. I climbed in. My home. And for the first time ever, I believed I had a future that belonged to me. Senior year came. And I walked into school with my head high. Wearing colors that weren't gray. Raising my hand 17 times in 1 week. Lucas sat next to me in English, passing notes that made me laugh until my face hurt. Homecoming, I danced. Ate too much cake. Didn't care if I looked stupid. Therapy twice a week helped the nightmares fade from nightly to rare. And then the letters arrived. 7 of them from girls who had been rescued because of this case. They thanked me for running. For gathering proof. For saving them. I kept every letter in a shoebox Nancy labeled New Beginnings. By spring, college acceptance letters rolled in. 8 schools. I chose pre-law. I wanted to fight for others like me. At my name change hearing, I became Ava Martinez. And the courtroom erupted in cheers. On March 15th, the anniversary of Mom's death, I laid yellow roses at her grave and read her a letter about who I'd become. About the life I was finally living. Prom. Graduation. Standing at the podium as valedictorian, my speech about resilience and chosen families echoing through the hall. Looking down at the Martinez family, who had given me everything I'd lost. That summer, I packed a used Honda Civic with clothes I'd chosen myself, books I loved, photos of my new family. And I drove toward Iowa City. Not running from anything. But driving toward a future that was mine. My voice. My laugh. My freedom. If you enjoyed today's drama, just imagine what's waiting in the next one. Hit like, subscribe, and let's go find the next train wreck together. Thanks for watching.